Alright, so these machines have been available under many different names, titles, and whatever. They have been available under the Eris Electrolux name, they've been under the Hoover name, they've been under Royal, of course. And, there have been various models, like the Hoover was called a Clean and Light, and that actually had a headlight on it, or at least the ones I've seen did. I've seen a yellow Royal one, this orange Royal one, and then the Eris Lux Light had a later variation which had the L-shaped nozzle to it. But I think it's the same machine as this, at least the internal workings of it. I'm not entirely sure on that. But, the white hooded one that looked just like this, of course, was the same. And working on this machine was not a lot of fun. It's like the front bearing was on a motor bracket, and it had a plate on the back of it that was this really thin, cheap metal. So it's like I drilled the rivets out and it didn't want to come out, so I had to take and push the bearing down through it, knocking that back plate off, which managed to get kind of dented up in the process. So when I reinstalled the plate and got the armature back on, the deformed plate was rubbing against the cooling fan. So it's like, oh. So it's like I had to take that plate off entirely. And then I had the grounding wire. That came loose because that was also on that front bracket, and it was just soldered on, and I have no soldering skills. I've tried. I'm not good at it. So I ended up using a ring terminal and just put the wire back on by sandwiching it between the field coil and something else. I can't remember if it was the front bracket or if it was back piece of that motor. Well, anyways, it's grounded still. And then we had the brush roll. It's like, I got this machine all fixed up, I thought, and then I was actually in the middle of making one of these videos on it. And when I shut the machine off, I couldn't help but notice, it still had kind of a noise to it. And I'm like, I put brand new bearings in here. It's like, it shouldn't sound like that. And then I discovered it's the brush roll. Oy. So took apart the brush roll, and it's like it has these weird little like inserts. I'm guessing they must insert the metal shaft into it, and then they have the inserts to hold the shaft in place. And if you would knock on one end of it, you would push the shaft, you'd push the little insert out on the other end. So it's like I had to deal with that to get the spacing right to allow the brush roll to move freely. And then once I went to put the belt shaft back on, I found that the shaft wasn't straight anymore. So we still have a slight... I'm just going to show you guys. And no, it's not the wheel, because the wheel is on as straight as it can go. I figured if I had a bench vise or something, maybe I could have gotten this straightened out, but I don't have one, so it's like I just had to hope for the best. And it seems to be working okay, which is great, because despite there being so many machines out there that was this same design, I cannot find one of these brush rolls. I've found sites that have them listed, but it still says, it says they're unavailable. So it's like, well, it's like I either have to fix this or this machine's completely non-viable. So yeah, not great that that's bent, but not much I can do about it. It runs, the bearings are good, and it's kind of all there is to it. It's like I usually don't have this many problems with one particular machine, but this one has tested my patience, and I'm glad to be done with it. Now, I'm hoping I still have some photos or video of the interior of this thing, because despite being set up, like a typical oreck, it actually reminds me more of the Hoover Elite, because the fan case and the motor all rotate as one item, like the Hoover Elite did. And then you have two brackets that actually hold that in place, like the Elite. As to where, you know what, in an oreck, it's the fan case that swivels while the motor remains stationary. But this is a little bit different from the Elite, because that had a, you had the front part and the back part, a cover over the motor, and that whole assembly swiveled. But in this case, you have two little, like, halves that come together over the field coil assembly of the motor. And I guess I can't really recall how the other parts fit into there. But yeah, very much like the Elite, but definitely not going to perform like the Elite because it has a very narrow fill tube on it, just like an oreck does. And these surprisingly use the Royal B bags, same as like their metal uprights. Style 18 belt, it's just a flat, like, knurled belt, kind of like a textured interior. But I think I've gone on kind of a long enough rant and rave about this thing. So why don't we get on to some numbers. All right. Got our ambient, of course. Ambient voltage. It seems to me that this thing might flick things into its path as it's moving backwards, because as I was moving it forwards, yes, there was some debris left, but it seems like when I pulled it back, there was even more left. So it's like, is it possible that these were actually directing debris into the air path? Or, I mean, into, I shouldn't say the air path. Was it directing it into the path that I had cleaned? Possible. But, it definitely does not have twice the power of an oreck. I mean, they make that claim and they say it's air power at the... measuring air power at the floor nozzle versus the XL Classic. I mean, if we're talking the typical 4 amp version, then no. I can't speak for what a lower amp version would have had, but this is clearly not twice the airflow, because I think those, I want to say those get somewhere in the low 50s. So, I mean, this does not have 100 CFM, or even, 90. So, not even close. But, it's not a terrible knockoff. I will say that. But, I would definitely take an upper line oreck, like a 21 or a Forever Gold or whatever, over this thing. Especially with parts availability on them. At least these days. But yeah, another machine measured and finished.